Welcome to the Trusted Visions podcast. So, Stacey, this month we decided to mix it up a little bit. We've been talking a lot about recruiting and the M&A space and all of that, which that is in our wheelhouse and something we spend a good majority of our time on. But it's often forgot Trusted Visions placement and consulting. So we figured it would be fun for our audience to really dive into not just the recruiting side, but the consulting side. And so for these next 3 weeks of this month, we're going to break it into three different sections, with it being talking this week about the broker dealer and recruiter consulting and how Trusted Visions can assist with that, and then breaking it into OSJ recruiting, which is always a fun topic, and then breaking it into financial advisors and how they grow and what we've seen to be successful in growing. So I'm glad that we're mixing it up. Great idea there, Stacey. Let me start with talking about this week of broker dealer consulting. And, both of us having spent 20 plus years in corporate America with specific broker dealers, we all know that broker dealers have goals and GDC goals that they set individually for recruiters and as a corporation. And what we found is a lot of times the broker dealer is either greatly exceeding that goal, they're meeting that goal, or they fall short of that goal. And the question I ask of a lot of these leaders within these organizations is, if you're meeting goal or falling short of goal, what are you doing differently to, change that mode of operation, so to speak? And, a lot of them say, hey, we just needed to change recruiters or we need to change that. And I would challenge our audience from this perspective is, a lot of times leadership within these organizations, what they do is they've been with these organizations for so long that everything becomes status quo. And it's hard to look from the inside because you don't know what you don't know. And where Trusted Visions comes in, we have both turnkey consulting programs, we have customized consulting programs that we can design based off of the broker dealer's needs. And it starts with some honest conversations of, what is your value proposition? And is it strong enough for this ever competing marketplace that we're in today with these broker dealers? A lot of leadership's excuse is, well, we just can't compete with some of those bigger firms from a transition money standpoint. I would again challenge you from the perspective of, you can compete. You just got to change the way that you're competing and be creative in that ordeal. The other side of it is, home office visit structure. A lot of times that's overlooked of, hey, that's minor. We don't really need to do anything from a home office visit structure standpoint to change it up. Well, that's your first opportunity to make a first impression. And so are you doing your home office visits and are you conducting them in the appropriate manner? Are there some small tweaks? Well, their small tweaks can make a major difference. And I'll give you an example of that. When I was with a firm, our very first home office visit, we have a prospect in, and we take them to a nice restaurant, but it's in a strip mall. And then the next day, if the prospect needed to make a cup of coffee, they had to walk out of the meeting room to go make a cup of coffee in the lobby. And it's just those little things that make such a big difference. And so to our audience, my point in saying that is you don't have to use the excuse of, we're not meeting or exceeding goal because we can't compete with the transition dollars that are being thrown out there. Well, a lot of times it is about the money. It's not always about the money. And there's firms out there that advisors want to feel like they're part of a culture and have access to leadership. And it's just a matter of making sure that you're verbalizing that value proposition in the appropriate manner to your prospective advisors, because you don't have to lead with, hey, if you're looking at that firm, they're going to throw a whole heck of a lot more money at you. So I know that was a lot, and those are just a few examples. And so for anybody that has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we could talk about both the turnkey models and the customized consulting programs we have. But Stacey, taking it a step further, and you lived in the shoes of these corporate recruiters for 20 plus years, can you talk about how Trusted Visions and we can help the recruiting team or business development team, whatever you want to call them, individually with not only meeting their goals, but exceeding their goals?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeremy. And you brought up so many good points there. My brain's kind of racing a little bit with just different examples of what I've seen go well and some of the things you brought up, and some unfortunately some failures in each of those areas too. So, nice job there. Okay, so each of us as recruiters, right? It's a tough business. You're always, I'm just going to put it out there. Sometimes you're always, it's a head game, right? You have to constantly be looking at ways to improve your own performance, your own engagement with advisors. So yes, there's things from the broker dealer side, as Jeremy is sharing, that impact your success. But from a personal basis, you should always be seeking to, hey, how can I do something better? This is such a fantastic industry where you never know it all. Like there's always things that you're learning from your advisors that you're working with, and internally at your firm. So I guess first of all, embrace that, right, for what it is. But how can we help? How do we consult with recruiters, excuse me, as they're trying to hit those goals? And Jeremy, there's so many directions we could go with this. I had a hard time kind of narrowing it down, but I am going to just kind of stick with first impressions and your ongoing engagement, right? In that path of trying to get that yes from that advisor that you want to join your firm, first impressions matter. That very first call, you better be responsive. Let me just pose you a question, Jeremy. I have an advisor. You're an advisor. You call in. Maybe you do an email request to three different broker dealers. One takes 24 hours to get in touch with you. The other one calls within the hour. Which one do you think wants you bet more?
The one that calls you within an hour. I had that prime example. I won a deal because the advisor was looking to move, and I told him, "Hey, I'll be out there to visit you next week." And you know, I won that business because the recruiter with the other firm said he couldn't get out there for another 2 to 3 weeks.
It
It's like you said,
matters.
first impressions.
First impressions matter. That from the initial call to your ongoing responsiveness of answering questions, returning calls, it's a big deal. And that first impression is something you can't go backwards and fix. And I think all of us, right, have had experiences where we've won and made a success out of that. And unfortunately, when we've made a misstep and missed something. So just underscoring that responsiveness is huge. In that initial call with someone, I would also challenge every recruiter out there, what's your value proposition that you're identifying? Or your elevator pitch. Like when you speak with that advisor, is it a compelling story? Are you just regurgitating the same old pitch? Because I think we've seen and heard that before. If someone interrupted your pitch, is it going to throw you off your game? I've seen that too. So I think just keeping that real, keeping it alive. Do you believe in what you're saying? Because if you're being fake, people can feel it.
Yep.
Can that advisor relate with what you're saying? And so, there's a lot of ways that we can look at that value prop and relate it back to what your style as a recruiter is, making it real, making it compelling for your advisor that you're working with. So those are a couple of things on the first impressions that I would, question and spend some time on. Now, your ongoing engagement with a recruit that you're working with, listen. There's a little bit of silence there. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it's good. If you can talk less and listen more, you will actually gain so much more. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard a recruiter on the phone just fill up the space with words, and the advisor just doesn't feel heard at the end of it and they move on. And so it's unfortunate. You got to just teach yourself two ears, one mouth, right? So you should talk less, listen more. Very basic, very hard to do for some salespeople out there.
Yep.
When you are engaging with offices, there are firms that, hey, it's pretty easy to just get right to the numbers. Here's the offer. This is what I need from you. And okay, fine, right? You got to know your audience and you got to be able to get beyond just the numbers or what your offer is. I'm working with a group right now that is all about the outsourcing. And the two groups that they've got it narrowed down to, one has the highest numbers. If it's all about that, it's pretty easy. But the other one, I mean, they're like on their fifth call going through all the different outsourcing solutions because that's going to impact them down the road from a growth standpoint. And so it just comes back to listening, what's really important to your advisor. And then the other part of that is always have a follow-up with your each call that you have. Don't give up, don't assume. I had an advisor just a couple weeks ago tell me, well, Stacey, that firm never followed up with me. And if they're not following up with me, then they obviously don't want me. And I know from the other firm's perspective, they kind of gave them a next step and, they just didn't think that they were interested. So you just got to be aware of that and work for it. Make sure they know you want them. So, Jeremy, those are just a couple areas. And again, I know we could go on this topic for a long time. So I will stop with that.
Great info, Stacey. And I always say, I mean, to your point, being a recruiter in this industry is great because really you're the only one in control of your destiny. And what you put into it is what you get out of it. And to those recruiters out there in the audience, please don't take offense to this. Being a recruiter in the financial services industry is not an 8 to 5 job. Because if a client is texting you or calling you at 7 o'clock and you're not responding, there's another recruiter out there that is. So, Stacey, for our audience that wants to learn more about some of our turnkey consulting programs or talk about a customized program, your contact information.
Yep, you can reach me. My email is stacy.martin@trustedvisions.com. My phone is 641-919-6722.
And for those in our audience, if you just want to have a conversation about some of the struggles you're having without engaging on a consulting program, don't hesitate to reach out to us. My contact information, info@trustedvisions.com, or call or text 480-430-5012. Look forward to everybody talking next week and hope you have a great weekend.